AI is going to amplify the type of marketer you are, going to amplify the type of lawyer you are. So if you're one who's going to cut corners, it's going to really exacerbate that. But if you're someone who's really going to push the tool and challenge the tool, it's going to amplify that too and make you a better marketer.
Welcome to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc., where we feature experts in growth and brand visibility for law firms and architecture, engineering, and construction firms. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle Calco-King. I'm your host, and I'm also the principal and president of Reputation Inc. We're a public relations and content marketing agency for law firms and other professional services firms. To learn more, go to rep-inc, that's inc with a K.com. As everyone knows, artificial intelligence has been the topic of conversation in 2023. We're all sort of navigating what it means for our jobs and how best to leverage these tools. And, in the legal sector for law firms, it can be somewhat of a tricky conversation. But some people in the field have taken a lead on this and have embraced AI and are doing really interesting things with that. And Jessica Aries is one of those people. I was really fortunate to attend a session of hers at the Legal Marketing Association Midwest Regional Conference, and she was full of useful tips. So welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I know you're a former attorney and you started your agency after a decade of working in-house at law firms. So let's start with you telling me a little bit about who you are and your firm.
Yeah, so By Aries launched really in the pandemic when, like many, I was furloughed and had to figure it out in a hot second. And I actually put up a LinkedIn post that went semi-viral within our industry where I basically just put up like a headshot and said like, hey, I'm a COVID-19 job seeker. And it resulted in this influx of leads to my now agency. At the time, I was me working in digital marketing because there was a real gap in the market at the time. As you remember, many firms hadn't quite fully embraced digital, maybe not social media the way that they had. And social media really built my business. So a lot of what we do is social media strategy and social media marketing. And we focus predominantly on LinkedIn, but we have migrated into video marketing lately and doing a lot more around new platforms, emerging platforms like TikTok and Reels and Facebook Reels. So really exploring those areas. And with that has come this need for really learning what AI can do to kind of advance and make simpler the workflows that we had in our agency. And so that's really how I got into AI. I was just looking to make things faster for us and find a way to really elevate what we were already doing. And I thought, why not test another algorithm? We're playing with the algorithms all the time. Why not test another robot? So that's how it came about. And so my agency predominantly does that. We work with lawyers to really, and law firms to enhance and perfect their digital brands online using social media strategies and video marketing strategies.
Love that. I follow some of your videos and we're trying to get a little, we do the same thing. We like to walk the talk and really do what we do for our clients, for ourselves. And when people ask me how we've grown, I say, well, we do the same kind of marketing that we do for our clients. And that's really built our reputation and helped us grow. But I think you do a really good job of that. I've followed you on LinkedIn for a while and your videos are especially very good. I think we can all, I know the law is a more conservative industry, but the way people communicate is very much so driven by a lot of these kind of trends from TikTok and things like that. My employees forced me to get on TikTok and to learn the styles more and understand, because videos are really kind of taking over social media. So yeah, love that. So let's talk about AI tools. Can you kind of talk me through how you've seen the emergence? I mean, I know AI has been around for a while, right? And I think that was a point you made in your presentation. This stuff isn't new. It's actually, being more and more incorporated, but it's sort of kind of like, feels like it came out of nowhere this year.
Mm-hmm.
How are you seeing the industry, take on AI? What's been the reactions you're seeing?
Well, I think like anything new, there's always a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation. Like, am I going to get myself into trouble with my bar license? I'm sensitive to that as well as someone who, I actually have people who ask me, do you write policies for like firms? And I'm like, actually, I try to avoid that just because I worry about the risk of it looking in some way, shape, or form in the future like I'm giving some
Right.
sort of legal advice. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that in our industry in particular, we have to be careful on what we're adopting and what we're taking on and how we're using client data, how we're using firm data. And so for me in particular, I really wanted to explore just how we internally in my agency could better leverage AI because I saw a huge opportunity. But beyond that, I also saw the kind of evolution. I had played around with some of the tools that were predecessors to ChatGPT before. I'm blanking on the one right now that I use the most, but I had played with a lot of them before, had seen how some of them
Like
were working.
Jasper or
Yeah,
one of those
Jasper. I was
kind of,
like,
yeah.
why
Okay.
can't think of the name of it right now, but yes, Jasper I had played with. I saw kind of how it worked, where it had issues. And so when ChatGPT launched, which I think is really what most people think of Gen AI now, their first immediate response is ChatGPT. And that's because when it became available to us, it was like taking that functionality of Jasper and giving it to us all for free. so
Right.
um, so for us, a lot of it was me trying to understand kind of break it. I'm one of those people, I love to play with it until I break it. So it was kind of challenging. What could I put into it? What would it give me back? What kind of prompts resulted in the best responses? And then how far could I take it? And so I think that's where firms in particular haven't yet tested it as much. And someone like me who loves to break it first is probably kind of refreshing to them to say, hey, I've already broken it. Here's the boundaries. Here's the places here's the pitfalls. Here's the things you don't want to step in.
Yeah.
And here's the ways to protect yourself from that. And so
Yeah.
that's really how I got into it and how I've approached it. And the way I'm seeing people in the industry now look at it is they are really wanting to understand what it can do for them, how it can impact their existing workflows, especially now that some of the kinks are getting worked out, as well as they better understand the terms of service. They better understand what kind of information they should and shouldn't be putting into it, as well as there's new tools and new advancements and even the different tiers of offerings that now allow for you to keep some of that confidential information or some of that information that would be confidential, truly confidential. And so there's this evolution, I think, right now, firms now being more interested in it and wanting to understand how they can leverage it, knowing that they don't have to jeopardize their bar license to use it.
Yeah. Right. Well, so I do want to get into the risks, but let's start with the opportunities. What are the best opportunities for law firms and their marketing professionals with AI? What can AI do for them?
Well, streamline a lot of the work we used to do in our marketing departments. And I came from in-house in a marketing department where I always felt like there was more work than there was time to do all of the work. You could literally work 12-hour days and still never be done because there
Yeah.
was another lawyer who needed your help with something. And so where I see the biggest opportunity is taking those things that are huge time sucks from our day and simplifying them. Something as simple as I have a client alert that's going out via email. I can simplify the process of creating the social media post that's going to go, the subject line, the lead into the actual article, the client alert that I might post on our blog or somewhere else. All of that can be simplified and leveraged with ChatGPT to just make things easier and speed up that process. But then beyond that, I think it's a great auditing tool, especially when you're asked to create a new campaign or a new idea for, let's say, an office launch or for the opportunity of a new industry group that's joining your firm. You can use it as a great brainstorming tool and just something to kind of verify that you didn't miss anything. It's a great
Yeah.
way for you as a great marketer to just enhance what you're already doing. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities there. But I do like to say too, the one negative drawback of ChatGPT or using something like that is you really have to already have those marketing skills before you start using it, because I think it amplifies the good or the bad. So if
Yeah.
you're a great marketer, it's going to amplify that you're a great marketer. If you're not a strong marketer, it's going to amplify the fact that you don't really know your stuff. And so
Right.
you've really got to spend that time honing those skills to be a great marketer first before you
Yeah.
can really use the tool to its full advantage. So for me, that's how I'm seeing firms really leverage it. And I'm seeing the great marketers get even better using it.
It's interesting when it like first came on the scene, everyone had this like immediate fear that it would replace them, And I sort of likened it to, because I'm old enough to remember, when social media came on the scene and Google, and, I was working back before, there was an internet. It really just is an evolution in our work and learning how to use the tools available to us to be better at what we're already doing, not to replace. I mean, surely it will replace some of those very mundane, tasks that honestly, most of us graduate out of, and we're going to skip that level now. So absolutely. Let's look at best practices when using AI. And I loved in your presentation, you kind of went through a case study, and you actually had AI ask you questions. I loved that thought. But let's talk in general best practices for using AI in your day-to-day work.
Yeah, so I think experimenting with the prompts is the first place. My first best practice is to give AI a job. So before you sit down and just start asking it questions, I think it's important to tell the robot who it's supposed to be. Because sometimes we
Yeah.
sit down and we'll just write a question to it. And so it's going to pull from all over its database of language when it responds. And sometimes that's when you get the worst responses. So if you can help the robot understand what role it's supposed to be playing in this conversation, that helps you a lot. So I love to start with saying, like, hey, you're a marketing expert at a law firm. So you're not just a marketing expert in e-com, you're now a marketing expert at a law firm. And I think helping it set the stage of understanding what role it's supposed to play. And then I, as you mentioned, like to have it ask me questions about me or my business or my client or whoever I'm trying to solve the problem for. And that's where I think you really get into understanding, do you know enough information as a marketer to really utilize this tool? Because it's going to ask questions like, who is your target audience? What geography are you like trying to target? What are their pain points? What are the issues? What are the objections they have when they're talking to you in a consultation? And I think as marketers, we don't always have access to all of that information unless we go back to the lawyers and say, hey, so what were the objections that someone gave you
Right.
the last time you pitched them in a meeting? What were their reasons why they didn't hire you? And that makes you actually be a better marketer to say, why haven't I ever asked these questions before?
Yeah.
and thought about that when creating content or when creating messaging for our firm.
I'm a big fan of being a good questioner. I did a lot of speaking for a while on the art of knowledge extraction, because I do think that is a critical role as a marketer, because we can't know what we don't know. And being good at drawing out the right information is a skill. A lot of people on my team are former journalists, and I find that a really important skill. So being able to utilize AI to help with that, to help that process is a really cool functionality. Well, let's talk about risks, and maybe kind of those. We talked about best practices. What are those things to avoid and risks to be aware of?
I mean, anytime you're putting anything confidential into something that has a terms of service that says it's discoverable, red flag. Like
Yeah.
as a lawyer, anyone who's worked in legal marketing long enough, that's a red flag, right? Understanding the terms of service of anything that you're using,
Yeah.
making sure you understand who owns the IP rights of the output. That's an important part too. I know as a former I did IT and privacy law. As someone who worked in that area, privacy a huge concern too, right? Are you putting information in there that's private information that shouldn't be shared? Names of
Right.
clients, beyond just confidential, but also things that your clients wouldn't want you to have put into something that's discoverable for
Yeah.
whatever reason. So there's a lot of risks in that sense. And so I think having a good understanding of what should be put into the tool, what's allowable, what's not allowable, but then beyond that, also just using your brain, right? If you wouldn't broadcast it across social media, then you probably shouldn't be broadcasting it within ChatGPT. Especially if you're using the free version, you don't have the enterprise version, or you're not using one of the other tools that's a closed system. I know a lot of firms right now are building their own systems for that exact reason, or using tools like I heard of one called Claude that's more closed. Those are ones that, from my understanding, have that ability to kind of protect that data. So if you're wanting to use some of these tools and you're not ready to pay for the enterprise level of ChatGPT to have that protection, maybe look at some of those like Claude, or even building your own or partnering with someone who already has built one that will close it down for you.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about the fact that they are basically watermarking some
Yeah.
any content created by ChatGPT? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I actually saw that that first came to light in an article I was reading. So we write a weekly new or no, sorry, a monthly newsletter that talks about the latest things that are happening in social and digital media and marketing. And I saw a New York Times article that was talking about how these systems they are created by a library of content that's uploaded into them and then digested basically and spit out. Well, that content has to be written by humans. And so the system doesn't want to have, the people who created ChatGPT, OpenAI, they do not want their system to be filled with AI generated content. So
Right.
what they're doing is they're watermarking the outputs that they're putting. They're putting the words in certain order in a certain order to be able to scan and be able to see, okay, this is AI generated content. So they don't input back into the system content that was Gen AI created. They have to preserve the integrity of their systems. And so you have to be really careful of representing that this content is something I wrote and is my intellectual property and yada, 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 without realizing that this is happening on the back end. They are watermarking this data. They are using it, certain word structures, so that it signifies to the system that that is not something that's human written and thus doesn't corrupt their system and could be used later in the future. It wouldn't surprise me if there's tools to be able to scan and tell us, then everyone, all of us, and out you if you're claiming something's
Right.
written by you and is really AI generated.
Fascinating, which has implications then for copyright, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Copyright.
Interesting.
Also, if you're claiming you're not using Gen AI with your client's work and you are,
Right.
um, big, huge issue there. Your privacy policies too. A hello privacy lawyer over here is always very conscious of how what you're saying your policy is and then how you're actually executing your workload. So
Yeah.
you have to be really careful with all of those areas.
So let's talk tools. What are some of your favorite tools that you recommend? So let's say you're a marketer at a law firm and you really haven't gotten into AI yet and you want to improve your workflow. What would be some of the tools you'd recommend they check out?
Well, so I always recommend that if you're a marketer working in-house, you ask if you're first of all allowed to use any firm data when creating marketing materials. If there's a policy, follow that. Beyond that, if your firm's very strict and is like you can't use ChatGPT at all, then that's where I'd say go to your personal profiles and things like LinkedIn and experiment with tools like ChatGPT, test it out when writing your own LinkedIn bio and see what it gives you. Test it out with writing some LinkedIn posts to see what the outputs look like, things like that. If your firm allows you to use firm data, then there's a lot of different tools I would recommend playing with. The first one, obviously, ChatGPT, which is the most popular, but I do recommend upgrading to ChatGPT 4. The outputs are so much better and it has a much larger memory. So what that means is it can iterate on itself. You can have it ask you those questions. You can respond to those questions. It will recall what you had said in response to those so that you can get a better response in the iterations of your inputs and outputs. Which if you haven't used ChatGPT, go play with it so you can understand what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But it basically responds like you're chatting with someone. And so if you want a more sophisticated output, ChatGPT 4 has a better memory to be able to actually give you better outputs. Beyond that, the other tools that I'm really loving, I love AI for data. So I'm a big user of wanting to analyze data and slice and dice it in different ways. And I used to be one of those people who sat for long periods of time in pivot tables, slicing and dicing data to better understand what strategies are working for my clients, what aren't, and even the reporting that I'd get from some really advanced tools was never enough for me. So that's where something like ChatGPT with its plugin with code interceptor. No, I'm gonna mess it up. Code, I think it's Code Interceptor,
Okay.
will allow you to upload data and slice and dice it in different ways. So ChatGPT for sure. Beyond that, we do a ton of video content. So I'm using a lot of video tools like video.ai is my favorite by far. If you have a lawyer who makes a lot of webinars and you want to slice and dice them into smaller snippets that can be used on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on wherever, whatever platform you want to put them on. Video.ai is my favorite tool. It'll add captions. It'll highlight the places that are, best for potential engagement for
Yeah,
you. So that's a tool I really love. And we use Descript a lot as well because we do so
we
much
do
video
too.
editing.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
We
yeah,
use
and
that for our podcast and video as well. Yep. Hmm.
it's just so easy, and it basically takes your video content and makes it like a Word document. And so you can
Right.
edit your video content like a Word document, whereas before having to open something like Adobe Premiere, I mean, I have a multimedia design team that would do that, but it's still like just the opening of the application itself is a heavy lift on your computer. So to be able to
Very
use
true.
something like Descript is really the way to go if you're trying to edit, and can even help do voiceovers and things like
Yeah.
that. So those are some of my favorite tools, and tools that I probably use every single, actually, I use them every single day in some way, shape, or form, even though I'm not supposed to be editing my own videos. I'm always like, oh, I just want to adjust this.
Right. Yeah, and I think you mentioned one at one you mentioned one that I played around with, which I loved, which is the I think it's called Crystal
Yes.
AI, which is kind of it could, because it kind of combines. I love personality tests and assessment. I just find them fascinating. And I stumbled upon Crystal a couple of years ago and just ran it on friends and
Yeah.
a few of my employees, and the accuracy was scary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's part of the like LinkedIn tools, the business development side. So in that presentation, I tried to think from the marketing and the BD side because I also used to work in business development. I realized I actually manage BD tech for a global firm, and I just remember how I always craved more information. And so some of the AI tools I had showcased, one was Crystal AI, which basically scans public LinkedIn profiles and gives you a high level disc assessment on that person, so
Yeah.
you know how to approach communicating with them.
Yeah.
And if you haven't played with DISC, anyone here who's like, what's a DISC assessment? It's basically personality assessment that will
Hmm.
tell you how to have better conversations, what kind of information is going to resonate with people when you're talking to them. I'm a very visual person, so it always comes back with all these cues that when you're talking to me, visuals work better. But for others, it might be data, or it might be, paragraphs, or it might be case studies. So tools like Crystal give you insights into the people who you're potentially pitching, which is very powerful. Another tool that I love and use almost every day that I can't believe I didn't mention already is Taplio, um, which essentially works with LinkedIn. And it's a tool that it has a lot of capabilities, but my favorite lately that it's launched is the ability to create content for you, Gen AI generated LinkedIn post for you based on your past content. So it scans your past content and suggests different LinkedIn posts to share. And I use that one almost every day for idea generation. Now I do have to edit them; they're not perfect,
Sure. Sure.
but
Sure.
it's a great starting point, and it saves me a ton of time. And they actually now just released a carousel generator, which is amazing. So if you've written a blog post or something and you don't have a graphic design team, or you don't have graphic design doesn't have the time to create a carousel post for you, you can take the URL from your blog post, your article, whatever it is, and paste it into Taplio, and it will generate a carousel post for you in your brand colors, like instantly, and then upload it to LinkedIn
Fantastic.
for you. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
So
wild. Yeah. I remember Taplio from your presentation, especially the carousel functionality. So that's fantastic. Um, well, this has been fantastic. Is there any final thought around AI that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think my biggest reminder, and the thing that I actually started the presentation off with that you attended, but the thing that I'm becoming most known for is saying that AI is like makeup, in the sense that it should enhance what you have. It shouldn't cover it up. So remember that AI is going to amplify the type of marketer you are, going to amplify the type of lawyer you are. So if you're one who's going to cut corners, it's going to really exacerbate that. But if you're someone who's really going to push the tool and challenge the tool, it's going to amplify that too and make you a better marketer. So use it to enhance what you're doing, use it to enhance what you're doing in your legal work. and don't fall afoul of any of those confidentiality rules for your firm, or those privacy rules for your clients.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you. So we've been talking to Jessica Aries of By Aries. So if people wanted to get in touch with you and learn more, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn, I feel like, every day. So please reach out via LinkedIn, or my website's a great place. You can find my TikTok there, my reels, all my video content, and YouTube is another great place. I make long form videos there too on different topics. So if you're someone who really likes to get gritty and digest a topic in full, check out our YouTube channel. That's at By Aries Marketing. So
great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.